Yes, good
My name is
afternoon.
Will Baas, and very pleased to have the opportunity to represent our panel today. I'll wish everyone a good afternoon if you're on East Coast time, and if you're somewhere else in the world, the appropriate greeting for the time of day. Really pleased to have James, Jesse, and Crystal here today. And I'm really energized by today's topic. I've had the opportunity to speak at a lot of events similar to this, but not on this topic, and specifically talking about the intersections of identity in the veteran community, what the implications of that can be for corporations, for society, for DE&I efforts. So when I saw the opportunity to participate in this kind of panel, it pushed me a little bit to bring this to the forefront of my mind on my own thoughts on this, and then engaging a bit with some of the panelists in advance. Can tell you that you're in for some really unique perspectives and experiences, and I think it's going to be a good 35 minutes or so. Just by way of quick introduction, and we'll go down the panel and each kind of give a little bit of a snapshot of our background. And of course, our detailed bios are available on the conference website. But Will Baas worked for Comcast, NBCUniversal in a series of progressive talent roles, whether that be talent or talent management. But my passion in the veteran space stems from my military background. So I just retired after 31 years of service in the Navy. Today, by the way, is the Navy's birthday. We're 247 years old. So the rest of the folks on here are Army, so I don't expect any presents. But regardless, my military background, eight years of active duty, and then 20 years of drilling reserve, and then 3 years of active service at the tail end. I got recalled at the very end of my career, which was interesting timing. But in my civilian role in Comcast, I was really responsible back circa 2009, 2010 for our first veteran recruiting efforts, back when you had the disparate unemployment and civilians. And so that was really the start of my journey. So with that, I'll just go in order here on my screen. James, would you introduce yourself for the group, please?
Hey, everyone. James Fitzgerald, 9-year Army veteran, enlisted as an infantryman, did deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. Unfortunately, in 2010, while deployed with the 101st to Afghanistan, I was injured in combat operations, which led to my medical retirement in 2014. That, opened up the door for my professional life to take a complete pivot. Started moving into workforce development, focused on the veteran community, most notably at the White House with Michelle Obama, our First Lady Michelle Obama's Joining Forces initiative, focused on the military community as a whole in America, and really highlighting education, employment, and healthcare as means to support veterans moving out. So a lot of focus on that in my post-military career, and currently working in strategic communications and engagement for a financial services broker-dealer. In layman's terms, what I'm doing every day is impacting the veteran community through special engagement events, but also providing a podcast that informs the veteran community of what is out there for them to support them post-military.
Thank you, James. Appreciate you sharing. Let's go over to Crystal, please, for introductions.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for having me. I'm a 16-year veteran. I served in various positions throughout my career, starting in logistics. I did that for a couple of years, and then I went off into public affairs and was a photojournalist for a few years, where I was recruited to a weapons of mass destruction unit, where I was there for 9 years, and from there I went off to human resources, and I was medically retired in 2014. And now I am a full-time pain in the activist. I am a diehard advocate for veterans. I have a very strong passion for the veteran community. I come from a line of veterans. My padrino, who raised me, was a World War II veteran, POW, Baton Death March survivor. So when people ask me what my fight is like, it's like, wow, that's who raised me. So what do you think? But I am also an entrepreneur. When I left the military in 2014, I had to kind of find a new passion, a new dream, and I started with a company called Poshmark, and we've been working with them now for 10 years. And also, just like I said, just being a pain in the activist and just sticking up for veterans and their rights and making sure that they get, everything that they deserve, that we deserve.
Thank you, Crystal. Appreciate that. And Jesse, before I move over to you, I committed an almost unpardonable sin. I said the other three members were Army, and I do know from our call that you're a Marine. So I apologize for that. However, you were Marine infantry. And so when you and James started swapping stories there as the Navy guy, I was a little bit left out on that. So I put you both kind of in the same box. But I certainly recognize your service as a U.S. Marine. So over to you for intros.
No, thanks so much, Will. Really appreciate that, and forgiven. It is the Navy birthday after all. No, just to make one quick comment, I love hearing the backgrounds. I think to me it screams non-traditional is such a beautiful thing. And in my story is similar. Right. So I joined the Marine Corps after undergrad and served as an infantry officer in the Marines from 2009 to 2013. That was with 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines out of Camp Pendleton. 2011, spent some time in Southeast Asia, helping out with the Tohoku tsunami that hit the east coast of Japan with the Fukushima, the nuclear plant that had the spill. And then 2012, we were in Helmand Province in Afghanistan. And then 2013, got lucky enough to do an operations officer IA billet in Darwin, Australia. So that was a fun, really got to go to 3 places I would probably never have experienced otherwise. So Marine Corps was a phenomenal, life-changing, certainly experience for me. Post-Marine Corps, I have kind of bounced around a little bit, all sort of within the construction, kind of more macro construction industry. I was in commercial real estate and brokerage when I got out, and then I spent five years as a project manager, superintendent with a big general contractor doing vertical construction management, and then have since went back to grad school and then into consulting. And now I serve as the director of talent recruitment and development for MCFA. And it's a professional services and consulting firm for programs, projects, and construction within the AEC, or the architectural engineering and construction industry. So that is where I currently am, and a bit of my background. So very, very happy to be here. Very humbled to be on this panel with everybody else that is a part of it.
Well, thank you, Jesse. Now that we've introduced ourselves a bit, why don't we dive in and start kicking around our topic today as we think about the various we have within our veteran workforce and what some of those implications can be for corporations and other organizations. And I think we're going to keep it today more of a opportunity for each of us to talk about our passion in this space and what we bring to this topic. So I'll start for a few minutes here and then lead us through the various panelists in kind of the open. I will also say we're looking at questions here on the chat. So as you have those, try to weave those in. And if we can answer them during the course of the chat, happy to do that. And we also hope to leave several minutes at the end to address any of those as well. So I'll just talk a little bit about what this topic means from a Comcast NBC perspective. I'm thinking many of you know our organization. Comcast is the largest provider of broadband and internet and cable TV, and then NBCUniversal arm is our NBC broadcast networks, our theme parks in Florida, Universal Studios and Islands of Adventure, and in California, and globally, as well as our networks and our film studios. But our real first recognition of the importance of looking at veterans holistically and the tie-in to DE&I was really back in the very beginning. I referenced 2009, 2010. There really was a national dialogue in the country on what corporations could do to help with veteran unemployment. Coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and they couldn't get a job. And there was the recognition that as a country and as a corporate America, this was not the right this was not the right situation that we wanted our veterans to experience, and certainly learn from the past unfortunate experiences of the Vietnam veterans. And so as part of that, it was building a business case for why should we put dedicated effort, time, and money and focus on veteran recruiting. And what I've found in my business career is that if you can make multiple parallel reasons on why something is a good idea, your business case is a lot stronger. So clearly there's the empirical thought that the unemployment rate is worse for veterans. So what can we do to try to close that? But as a company started to link it to some of the other things that we care about, right? We're always interested in our brand out there. And so there's corporate social responsibility tie-ins. There are potentially branding and marketing opportunities as we talk about what our company is doing for veterans. There's government relations opportunities. We are a federal government supplier, so be able to tell our story on how we're making a difference in the veteran employment space. And where I'm going with this related to DE&I is there's a DE&I tie-in here as well. And that's been a priority for Comcast NBC since our inception. And so the ability to talk about the veteran workforce being, approximately 40% person of color, about 17% female, talk about the representation of some of the communities we'll touch on here, whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's wounded warrior, was able to say that this is a natural fit with our focus as a company on DE&I. And so when you start drawing all those things together and you say it hits all of these multiple avenues, this is something that makes such sense for us to support, that we were able to get that CEO level buy-in. It also helped. He was a Navy veteran from World War II, and some of our key leaders, and really helped build the business case. So I think even early on, as we had a focused military effort, this idea of the diverse population of veterans was part of the fabric of that. And then as we grew, employee resource groups for us came out around the similar time, at just sort of 2009, 2010. But we led with our veterans employee resource group precisely because it is so inclusive and represents so many identities. And so that was really our first ERG, and that sort of paved the way for some of the ones that followed: our Black Professionals Network, our We Need Us Network, our My Abilities Network, our Young Professionals Network. And so, the concept of leading with a ERG that can touch so many different sorts of people really was able to help accelerate it. And then ultimately, a couple of years later, as we were digging in the space, we were able to do the first example of really ERG's work impact. And that was taking advantage of people that were part of the Veterans Network, but also part of these other groups. And so we were going to job fairs that were specifically focused on veterans with disabilities. And it was a joint effort between VetNet and My Abilities. We were targeting newly separating veterans after their first enlistment. So folks that are generally in their young 20s. And so we did a combined outreach effort and mentorship effort with our Young Professionals Network and our Veterans Network. And I think it was some of these early successes that really promoted across the whole company this idea that ERGs could work together towards common goals. And we were able to demonstrate that as sort of a proof of concept out of the veteran space. And so I would say that, we've been harnessing the advantages of looking at the holistic, diverse nature of our veteran population from the outset, and continue to do so in the future. So with that, let me pass it over to James. And when I had a chance to talk to James in advance of this panel, he really has a deeply personal connection to our topic today. And he was talking about his personal experience and meaning that he derived from this. And, you know, the idea of fighting barriers and mindsets and perceptions, very, very powerful. I learned a lot just from the pre-call. And so I'm really looking forward to bringing his perspective in. So, James.
Oh, thank you, Will. One of the things that I definitely highlight for a lot of organizations, nonprofits, elected officials, not just the core of my service, which I enjoyed every single moment, but it also has to come with kind of an asterisk, because the majority of my service was during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And as a closeted gay male, I had to, on a constant daily basis, leave a portion of myself at home and actively pursue ways to suppress that while I was at work. So one of the things that still haunts me to this day that I use as a motivational tool for myself for the work that I do is asking myself, how much energy, how much time, how much work did I have to utilize in order to put down that portion of myself, in order to put up a facade, in order to do my job, in order to fulfill my service. And, you know, after, you know, so many years of thinking about it, I equate it to smoking. And you look at the amount of money that one puts in to purchasing cigarettes and the health effects and everything that comes along with that. I equate that with Don't Ask, Don't Tell, because the military as a whole is a diversive machine. It has so much that it brings to the table, introducing other people. I come from a small town in Tennessee, introducing individuals like me to individuals from across the country that I would have no other opportunity to engage with. But what wasn't being done was having an environment that's conducive to that, because you had many LGBTQ individuals that had to leave a portion of themselves at home and weren't able to bring that diversity with them day to day to work. Me being in the infantry, everything was fueled by respect and trust. And I still have to combat those feelings in myself, feeling like I was being disingenuous to my soldiers, I was being dishonest, and I wasn't upholding one of the Army values, which is integrity. So post-military, I look back on my time, and even though Don't Ask, Don't Tell was rescinded in 2012 before I got out, I still wasn't able to right that ship and turn on a dime and say, oh, yesterday I wasn't able to serve openly and now I am. There were so many things that I was trained to do in the military that was not one of the things I was trained to do. So as we have conferences like this and we speak about ensuring that we bring veterans in and we give them these opportunities for hiring, we have to underscore that by making that environment conducive to veterans bringing their holistic self to work. I'm Black, I'm gay, I'm a disabled veteran. All of those are being brought to the workspace with me. And I need to be in a space that is accommodating to not just 2/3 of myself, but the whole me, in order to maximize not only the effectiveness I can bring to my organization, but the self-care that's necessary off from work for me to have that good balance. So not only can I be a good member of my team at work, I can be a good member of Team James and take care of myself. After a pandemic, we all understand the value of mental health. So understanding not only what we need to do as organizations, what we need to do as a community to support veterans as they transition out and give them the ability to be their whole selves, to continuously cultivate and improve upon every single space that we open up to the veteran community, knowing that we come in all different shapes, forms, and sizes, and we have to be accommodating of that.
James, thank you very much for that powerful discussion. You mentioned Team James along the way, and you know, that's I'm proud to have had the opportunity to hear about that. Crystal, I'm going to go to you, but first let me just do a check on Jesse. This could be on my end, but I lost video on Jesse. Are you still out there?
I'm right here. I've never moved. Can you hear me? Or
Does anybody, you hear him?
I see him and I hear him clearly.
Okay.
You still look great to me, Jesse.
Yeah, thanks, James.
All right. Well, then what's important is that you guys can hear him and maybe not me, but let's go to Crystal first, and excited to hear your discussion. I know from our prior dialogue, you'd like to talk a little bit about experiences of disabled veterans or veterans with disabilities, and then maybe touch a little bit on, the importance of being able to bring your authentic self to work. And so with that, Crystal, please, I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, William. And thank you, James, for that. I'm just going to kind of piggyback up a little bit of what James talked about, and that's being able to show up as your full authentic self to work. And during my time in the service, my last several years, I was a platoon sergeant, and I had a transgender soldier in my platoon. And I think I learned more from that experience just as to how to show compassion and to be understanding of someone who is, who's just needing a little bit more support. And again, just being able to show up as your authentic self to work is just going to open so many more doors for your company, because then you're going to be able to be more creative. You're more comfortable in your own skin. You're comfortable with your team. You feel comfortable communicating all of your ideas. And as long as you can do that, I mean, you're being set up for success. So having that support in your workspace is very important. My first job when I retired from the military I was the director of operations for a medical practice. I did that for a year. And I had several employees, a couple of them with disabilities. So getting familiar with the American Disabilities Act and finding out, okay, I need to be able to accommodate some of my employees and their disabilities, whether it's allowing them to have their service animal in the office, or if they require a workstation where they need to stand, they can't do sitting for long periods of time. It could be a different number of things, but most importantly, that mental health support and being able to support people to be themselves was huge. On the other end of it, myself being a disabled veteran, I had a hard time with that because I didn't know whether or not to disclose it to my employer. I was kind of like in that feeling of where I felt kind of embarrassed, because I have post-traumatic stress, and that's not an injury that you can see. So oftentimes people look at me, they're like, "What? You have PTSD?" No, you don't. You look just fine. And it's like, I look fine right now, but I'm not fine all the time. So just being able to show compassion to people, and also when they do open up and disclose something like that, hey, I have a disability, being understanding, talking to them and finding out, what are their needs, is also very important. So I'm also Team James. I think that's great. And
there's your hashtag for the session.
That's it, James. The Twitter bug is gonna come out.
I've always wanted to go viral. That's what I wanted to. That's always what I wanted to do.
Yeah. This is your moment. But I'll yield back.
Well, thank you, Crystal. And again, I apologize that I can't see and hear Jesse, but fortunately everyone else can. So let me introduce Jesse. So just ask if you give me the thumbs up when he's completed, so I know where to pick up. And then, looking at a time check here, it looks like we have about 15 minutes or so. So we'll hear from Jesse, and then we'll come back and maybe we'll see what questions might look like in the chat, or if you're able to ask them verbally, and we'll go from there. Let's keep the Team James hashtag. Yeah. So let me turn it over to Jesse. And I'll look forward to hearing on the recording what he said. But he's going to talk to us about a lot of research-based insight that he has assembled over the last couple years as part of his graduate work. And so, his ability to sort of tie research into the veteran space, I found really engaging. He also brought a different aspect of diversity. When we were doing our prep call, he talked about cognitive diversity, and that's something important, and it's an aspect of DE&I that we haven't talked yet about on this call, and isn't always in the forefront of people thinking about, again, how broad that term can be in the veteran population. And so with that, Jesse, I'm happy to turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Will. T. James all the way. So I think so when I was in grad school, I had to write a thesis as a part of this program, and I was really interested between transitioning out in 2013 to where we are right now. I've been really intrigued at the amount of resources that have become available for transitioning military veterans. And I mean that by both like independent or private organizations or nonprofits, but also the Department of Defense, their willingness to stand up the SkillBridge program, right? And so what I saw was this kind of resource-rich sort of foundation that's being built to facilitate the military to civilian transition. To me, I love it. Don't get me wrong. To me, that's a pretty finite window. And I think where I get kind of caught up, and this is what sparked the graduate school research study, was veterans are then a part of organizations for maybe 10, 20, 30, 40 years instead of, that 6 to maybe 12-month transition window. And they're certainly not fully transitioned when they get their first job or land it. So what I did was do a qualitative research study on, it's titled An Organizational Guide to Leveraging Military Veteran Human Capital. And what it does is it seeks to uncover and to discuss the non-technical skills that veterans, regardless of branch or rank, develop and utilize as a part of their military training and operation. And what through the 27 interviews I think I conducted across 9 different industries, I interviewed veterans on the non-technical skills that they had experienced, that they had seen be applicable and be a force multiplier in the civilian workforce. And those were there was 106 responses, I think, but bucketed, they came down to creativity and collaboration, adaptability and resilience, servant leadership, effectiveness under pressure, and visibility into diverse work teams. And to pull the thread on that last piece, those of us that served know undoubtedly when you're thrown into your first unit, there are people that have extremely different backgrounds than you in all senses of that term background, look differently, had different religions, different diets. And so that's really, I think, where I talk, where I know Will can't hear me, but when we talk about
I can.
Oh, fantastic. So really, exactly building exactly on what James and Crystal are talking about, but we're looking at empowering authenticity and being able to sort of leverage people's strengths in this organizational workforce. And I think key to that is celebrating the fact that there is cognitive and experiential diversity, and that is like people problem solve differently because of your background, because of your experiences, because certainly your identity as a veteran and your experiences in military training and operation, you probably mission plan and execute differently than a lot of your civilian or non-veteran counterparts. So I think acknowledging that that people are all have different background, different experiences in growing, and certainly cultural diversity and difference of experience. So, that's really where the research in visibility into diverse work teams, that was one of the 6 major buckets that veterans said, I am used to operating with people with extremely different backgrounds and navigating what works for people and how they problem solve, and working together with people's differences in order to sort of look at the objective and accomplish the mission. So as this is titled Employing U.S. Vets, understand that that is a self-identified soft skill or non-technical skill that veterans see that they were put into units and military positions and forced to put mission above a lot of things, especially differences that separate us. So that is an experience level that I think really adds an incredibly rich amount of value to what veterans can bring to the diverse, the multiple layered, diverse team member approach.
Great. Well, thank you, Jesse. And what I think I might do here is put the call out for anyone to start submitting any questions that you might have. And while we're kind of waiting to see if anything comes into chat, I'll just share one other thought as I'm listening to everyone talking about their experiences and their identities. One of the things that's been occupying my mind space lately in the veteran area is services are having in recruiting the next generation of people to serve. And it really is a threat to our ability to maintain an all-volunteer military. And we've seen it affecting all the services. I did see the Marines made all of their goals, but by like 8 Marines. It was very tight. And the Army has some significant challenges in that space, as does the Navy Reserve. And so, my question is, can telling our stories and all the different facets of our backgrounds help talk to the generation of youth out there that we're counting on to join the military, to realize that there is a place for them within the military, that a veteran is not what you might first think a veteran, or if someone that's serving is not, just one stereotype, that they can be multiple examples of America represented in our military. And perhaps as we get out there and think about how we're talking about the military, what we can do to help incent this next generation to come in. And I certainly think talking about, authentically our identities and our backgrounds perhaps could help audiences that might not think they have the propensity to serve. So that would be my question. James, you look like Team James has something to add.
Yeah, like if we were in a stadium, I'd be on my feet and just screaming, because like you definitely hit a home run with what you just said. There was something during our initial conversation that I'd like to bring up for our audience today, which is, an exercise of closing your eyes and envisioning a veteran in your mind. And my challenge to everyone is, if your vision of a veteran isn't a continuously rotating image that's changing shape, size, and color, then my challenge is, why not? Ask yourself that, why not? Because veterans come in all different shapes, forms, and sizes. So we have to understand that, sometimes it takes us to break the mold and show an audience that may not have seen this before that this is possible. I come from a military family, but what I'd never seen was someone that was doing the job that I wanted to do. I grew up in the 80s and I wanted to be G.I. Joe. But I needed to meet someone that had embodied that so I could know that it's tangible, it's something real that I can touch. Through our stories as human beings, through anthropological history, have used storytelling to transfer knowledge. That's how we get the next generation, is letting them know that you don't have to do it the way that I did, but it is possible through your own medium.
Thank you, James. And I'm looking at some of the questions here. One kind of directed to my point about, what we can do to attract more young people to the military, and saying that branches need to partner with their vets to get that message across. I agree with that. One of the big things we were seeing in Navy recruiting from my recent stint of active duty is young people were saying, so I'm maybe interested in the Navy, but what do I do with my dog? How dog friendly is the Navy? You know, and the net is on the upfront part of it. It's not going to be very dog friendly, right? And so how do you message that on what are the alternatives and what could it look like later in your military career after you're out of boot camp? But, you know, the service is sort of leaning into that and saying, how do we create this dialogue? I agree is it's an untapped resource to talk to the individual services veterans to help us amplify their messages. Jesse, I'm seeing a lot on soft skills out here, and I know that's something that's a passion for you. You know, how do you train non-veteran hiring managers on soft skills, and how do those soft skills fit their diversity needs within the company? You know, anything to add in the soft skills realm for the group, please?
Sure. So, you know, obviously it was a long paper, a lot to dive into. Don't want to do all that. I will put if I can find a link to the site, I'll drop it in the chat so that people could grab it. But with that said, on the soft skills, I think one of the most important, can everybody see me? I think I lost. Okay.
I can see you, hear you.
Yeah, I mean, it came back down. It was 4 organizational engagement drivers. They were challenge, motivation, community, and communication. And those organizational engagement drivers were linked to the themes that were presented in the research. So in direct response to the question, having like a quarterly conversation with non-veteran managers to kind of develop your own questionnaire around, are you challenged? Are you motivated in different areas? Are you being communicated with effectively? And are you feeling heard as you communicate? And do you feel a part of a community? And all of these can kind of be lensed within a team or an organizational level. I kind of think there's always the individual, the team, and the organizational level. I think those are the 3 ways in which you should approach any sort of organizational question. But really, it's a one-on-one conversation with a non-veteran to a veteran, and that's a 2-way street. The veteran's got to work on effective communication, telling him what the important needs are and what is or is not being met. And the manager needs to listen and say, how can I then make some changes? How can I support different ways? Because again, it's always a balance of individual needs versus organizational needs. The pendulum may swing one way or the other, and managers might cater more toward individual needs at some points, but organizational needs are gonna be a driver. So understanding it's always a balance of those 2 things, and it'll shift back and forth, is really is how those 2-way communication conversations can be effective at the small unit level.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. I'm seeing a question here from Hannah on, you know, what are ways to make the workplace more inclusive to vets from the top down? You know, and I'd broaden that and say, you know, in general, companies today, ones that are aware of where society is and where their workforce's mind share is, you know, as you look at Generation Z, inclusivity and being authentic in that space is a key part of the value proposition for them joining a company. And so really, it's part of the business case for your talent argument, right? If you're going to continue to be able to attract talent, if you're going to continue to be an employer of choice, being able to talk about your organization as being a place that welcomes people to be their authentic self and provides an inclusive environment is going to be critical to doing that. And that's everything from senior leaders walking the talk. It's about, you know, the reach and engagement and importance of employee resource groups. But it's also about, are you freeing up your employees to talk about their experiences on the job? Because what I'm seeing is anymore, people don't want a job. They're looking for an experience, right? A young person coming out of college, I want to experience working at Comcast. What is that experience like? So how are we as a company thinking about what kind of experience we're delivering? And that's broader than just the actual role that they're hired to do. It's end to end. It's the culture. It's what they're adding. It's how they're contributing. It's how they're feeling in the organization. And so I would also urge companies to allow opportunities for their employees to express their voice through social media, through different video technologies today. Because with populations, they don't want to just hear from a corporation saying this is what it's like here. They want to hear from the folks that are working every day and operating in that environment, and speaking from their perspective would be my thought. And then I'm seeing a question here, and we kind of are at time. So I don't know what point we'll get the hook. But there was a question on insights on hiring veterans interested in learning or developing trade skills. And that's probably too broad of a topic. There's a lot of things like different programs out there, but Jesse, anything as walk-off music to add to that, or anyone else?
The construction labor shortage is going to be devastating in the next several decades. So that is a fantastically important question. Let's touch base offline. That is part of what I'm standing up as a Department of Defense to AEC, or Architecture, Engineering, and Construction, to recruit. There's hard hats, or helmets to hard hats, I believe. Helmets to hard hats is a nonprofit, and very happy to chat further if you want. Whoever asked that question wants to reach out to.
And I lost Jesse on his voice again, so I'm not sure if I'm interrupting him or whether.
No. He's wrapping up. He's saying that he's telling whoever wants to reach out can touch base with him offline.
Thanks, James.
All right.
I enjoy being the middleman.
I know. Hey, one more thing, William. I want to go just rewind a little bit. We talked about veterans in the workforce.
Are we still on stage, by the way, or are we still presenting to the broader group?
Can you hear me?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're live. We are live.
Please, Crystal, sorry.
Okay. I just wanted to make a point that, our National Guard service members are out in the workforce. They're the second largest military organization. The active Army having 385,000 people. The National Guard has over 400,000 people. So when you think about veterans in the workforce, you got to also remember our National Guardsmen that are out there, that are teachers, that are our construction workers, that are lawyers, doctors, dentists, all of these things. And then so how are we showing up for them, and how are we making them comfortable in the workspace? And then the other thing was, I think James talked about this, or maybe it was Jesse, about having diversity. I was the only female in my unit for 9 years. And, when I first joined the unit, it was kind of like, oh God, now we got to accommodate a girl. But over the years, it turned out to be like, okay, because I had skills that the guys didn't. There were some things that they just couldn't do. And I just want to brag for a minute, because when it came to confined space, your weapon, because I'm only 5 feet tall, right? And so they're like, get Romero. And it was like, for, hazmat challenges and stuff, it's like, we're going to win because we've got the winning ticket. So, being open to, the diversity, that everybody's going to bring something different to the table, and everybody has a gift. If you're able to take your gift and do it well, your team is going to thrive. So I'll leave it with that.
I was just going to jump on what you were saying, Crystal, is if it were easy, everyone would be doing it. Like let's have a diverse workforce. Oh, let's bring it in. But no, you have the challenges and the obstacles of what that diverse workforce brings. Not saying that there are always challenges and obstacles, but you have to take the whole picture into consideration. You can't just say, oh, I want the camaraderie and I want that level of productivity. It's like, no, you're going to have a space that's conducive for that environment to thrive.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why the military, we thrive on respect, because that's really what it comes down to. You don't have to necessarily agree with someone's their way of thinking, but when you respect one another, you can accomplish the mission because you're able to be professionals, and that's what we are, right? We're professionals.
The military, thankfully, has a robust talent of learning from its mistakes, at least in large instances. And I think that one of the mistakes that we haven't learned just yet is how to communicate effectively generation to generation. Looking at the history of our conflicts across the globe, you can see us getting better with each conflict. But, you know, with the war on terror lasting 20 years, I think the huge disconnect of the country, you know, because we're at war so long, kind of shortchanged that transition period that we all needed to go through together in order for us to come together and say, what just happened? And do, I guess, a battle damage assessment as a nation and say, how do we move forward? How do we reconcile this? And, you know, feel good about looking ourselves in the mirror the next day. We never had that time period. And we're trying to roll in everyone at one time period. The country, you know, is dealing with ending the war. The veterans are trying to deal with ending the war and moving into the corporate workforce and finding that purpose again. So all these can be handled at one time, but it has to be a collaborative effort.
Thank you, Team James and Team Crystal and Team Jesse.
Yes.
And with that, I think, Nick, are you on to take us to what's next?
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much to everyone here. It's been a fantastic pleasure listening to this entire discussion. Learned quite a bit, and I think it's really an incredibly timely topic. But at this point, I'd like to introduce Crystal Cochran from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Hiring Our Heroes, who will be leading this discussion upcoming on SkillBridge.